and we are actually officially live now on YouTube. So at least we got uh, all live streaming platforms going right now. So for the people that are just getting onto the YouTube feed, one of the things that I was just talking about is the issues that we're seeing with landlords and tenants right now. If anybody's listening and they want to call in live, the number here is 516-623-1240. And again, you're on the real estate plate.
Right.
And I'm going to dive into this and break it down for people in a way where I don't think anybody really has.
That's what I have to do.
And it's definitely going to be a different situation altogether as far as how I'm going to approach it. Before I get into this, I'm just going to mention a couple things. I'm going to make myself the best possible advocate I can as far as an advocate for landlords and overall housing rights. But in order for my voice to be heard and all the landlords' voices to be heard through my platform, I need the support necessary. So if you're listening right now and you're on Facebook Live, press a heart button. If you are on YouTube, press that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe or follow, because it is going to help reach more people, and it's going to help get the word out to a larger audience, just because of the way the algorithm works. The more people that show activity on each individual video and each individual post, the more attention Google is going to give it, and going forward, show it to an audience that might have never seen it before. So as everybody knows, I'm not necessarily doing this just to, if I was doing this just to benefit myself, I would actually just be promoting all the products that I'm selling and all the business and type of approaches we take, and make it all about myself and my team. I'm legitimately concerned about what the road we're going down is, and I truly want to help as much as humanly possible small business owners, landlords that are truly struggling right now. I really want to do everything I can. So if you're listening to this, like I said, make sure that you press the like button. Make sure that you press the little heart. So if you're on Facebook, subscribe if you haven't, because not only are you going to be hearing this video live as we are right now, or you're going to be playing in a replay in the future, but you're going to be actually helping expand the audience by interacting with the video. I'm learning a little bit as far as how this whole algorithm works. So it's super important. So one of the things that I'm going to dive into, and the most important thing, is the lack of activity and the lack of attention that landlords, especially small landlords, are getting as far as for their woes right now. I'll read a couple of headlines and let you all see what is being out there in the public. Because if you're doing a Google search right now, you're probably looking at a situation where you have, for every 100 posts or every numerous posts that you have, you might have one. For every 100 posts that you have, or numerous posts that you have out there for tenants screaming for additional delays or canceled rent, and if I hear that phrase again, canceled rent, it's gonna make me lose my mind, because how could anybody ask for something like that? But I'll get into that in a moment. For every, I don't know, 100 posts that you see like that, articles, different places where you see things advocating for the tenants, you might see maybe one for the tenant. And I actually grabbed a hold of as many as it would pop up from Google over the past week or so. And one came from CBS, which was one of the people that were at the demonstration that was being done last Friday in front of City Hall. In the rain, might as well say it was happening in the rain. And their headline is "Small Property Owners, Landlords Beg for NYC Tax Relief While Struggling to Pay Bills." Don't you see a problem with that headline in itself? Landlords beg NYC for tax relief while struggling to pay bills. And I don't see the reason why they need to beg. I don't see the reason why the right thing shouldn't be done. Looks like we don't have any sound again in Facebook. If it's not one thing, it's always another thing. It is absolutely bonkers what's happening right now. You know, as if I have enough, don't have enough headaches in my life, as far as why. I don't know why we having these issues, especially with Facebook with the sound. That's always happening, and it's always been a problem. And I might just have to stop using Facebook as a platform and just continue to use YouTube as the go-to place, because for some reason or another, I never have these kind of quality issues in YouTube. But for some reason, it's always happening. Always happening. If you could actually hear me on Facebook world out there, please let me know. But it's one of these problems that just for some reason keep occurring over and over again, and it's kind of nutty, and it's very annoying. But that being said, I'm going back to that headline, and that headline is "Small Property Owners, Landlords Beg NYC for Tax Relief," and I can't stand that. It is making me go nuts that the fact that they're actually, one, that they're putting the landlords in this position, and two, these kind of headlines. Next, which comes from the city, reporting for New Yorkers. This is a online type of platform as far as media is concerned. And the headline here says, "Mom and pop landlords struggling to collect rent face hard times." Yeah, I'll show you that. It shows a woman right there, probably a landlord. That's what you're seeing over there. And they came from a local website that's geared to the city. And this is an extensive article. I went through everything, and you should definitely read these entire articles yourselves, because it's another thing. Another thing is landlords rally to demand financial relief. And there you go. And that one was from Fox 5. Another one, Curb, New York. A lot of people know this one. Landlords loot fight against rent protections, Hotel Chelsea's latest tenant battle, and other news. I hope everybody could see these things well. And that was it. how many articles did I just say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 articles. That's all we got that's being shown. 5 articles. It makes no sense whatsoever that there's no coverage whatsoever being done for landlords right now. And they're the ones that are being basically put in a position to be able to burden all the responsibility that the city does not want to take on. And I'm going to be very clear about this, because there's always 2 sides to this story, and there's always positives and negatives coming from both sides. That's my personal belief, and for the most part, I'm usually right when it comes to that. Now, what's happening is travesty. I'm gonna really say it is a travesty. It is morally wrong what's happening. It is something that has caused a tremendous amount of stress, a tremendous amount of heartache, a tremendous amount of worry from the landlord community. And it is truly a horrible situation. Sorry to say this. Under what conditions do we basically deprive one side of the community and one side of the population and hurt them, specifically hurt them, to try to help another side of the population without just cause? And this is why I'm saying this. I'm going to be very clear about this. So everybody that is looking at it from a point of view of, you have the greedy landlords, you have the horrible people that are basically kicking tenants out of their homes and giving them all this grief and heartache. You have that segment that's saying that, but they're not looking at them as human beings. And I'm going to tell you why I'm saying that. There are so many. There's a tremendous amount of landlords out there that are breaking even, and in some cases, they can't even break even, and they need help. And the biggest reason they need help is because of these government mandated type of policies that have been truly hurting them. So let me rewind and give everybody a little bit of a history session. Come beginning of the year 2020, we have a ton of landlords that are already having major issues because of the rent revision laws that were put in place from back in June 2019. It was a tough situation. They were finally starting to somehow figure out how to be able to adapt and somehow finally be able to understand how to be able to almost work with the system. It was by far an unfair type of system that's in place, but it is what it is. And we had to deal with it. A lot of landlords couldn't. They try to put their houses out for sale. They try to just basically get out of it. But because of the falling sales prices of apartment buildings, it was hard for them to get out, and they basically had to endure and take a punch. Now, January, we start getting these rumblings about the coronavirus, not knowing exactly what that we're dealing with. February, it's starting to get more intense. Towards the end of the month in February, we really know that we're looking at something really serious. And then March comes around, and basically it's declared a national emergency. It's nothing to trifle at. It's nothing to laugh at. It's something really serious. We had a pandemic. It was a major situation and a national emergency which needed to be addressed. So there were a lot of things that were done at that time that were going to have an impact on the economy. They were going to have a very direct hurting type of effect on the economy, but some things were definitely necessary. Some things were maybe not necessary. We're always looking at hindsight 2020 and saying what should have been done and what would have been done, what I would have done, what he would have done. Well, what was done was done. One of the things that were put in place at that point was a lockdown. Businesses were either forced to close down completely or work on a partial type of situation. Weren't directly open to the public. A lot of people, because of that reason, were sent home because they didn't have any work. And we had an extreme slowdown on the economy. Simple said. Again, I'm not criticizing right now if that was done for the right or wrong reasons. You want to hear my outlook and my aspect on that? I could talk about that through another show, but this show is only 1 hour long, and we definitely don't have enough time to get into that. Right now, we're focusing on the effects of the rental moratoriums that were put in place. So right around the same time where we got put into lockdown, it was declared that at that time, there would be an eviction moratorium going into June. And at that time, that eviction moratorium basically said that you could not evict a tenant for non-payment. It was set in place because all the people that lost their jobs or were affected directly because of the coronavirus, COVID, whatever you want to call it. And there were no burden of proof. There was no burden of proof needed by those tenants to prove that they were affected by coronavirus or by COVID-19, which opened up the floodgates to a major issue. And I'm going to say what that major issue was. There were too many people that were manipulating the system. There were too many people that by all rights should have continued paying their rent, and they should have continued doing what they were normally done on a day-to-day basis prior to this declaration. Now, why this? Why did they do that? This was an impulsive move by our Fed, and I get it why it was done. And it was further enforced by the state and local governments. Now, the first thing that was done wrong was obviously the fact that they made a blanket eviction moratorium. Because here's what happened. You had a ton of people that were either in process of being evicted or people that were about to be evicted, and all of a sudden this moratorium saved them. It basically gave them a lifeline. And how are you going to turn around and try to enforce or possibly regulate who's taking this lifeline or not? That's the answer that we got from a lot of the individuals that were enforcing and placing these laws. And I'll tell you what, the answer is very simple. It's actually super simple. Ask them to prove that they've been affected by COVID in one way or another, or to prove that they are no longer collecting any income or out of work. Because here's the thing, there was a lot of people that got out of work that ended up collecting unemployment and actually were making more money than what they were making when they had a job. But yet they still weren't paying the rent. Now, I'm not going to lump everybody in the same group as far as the tenants are concerned. Not all tenants are the same. Not all tenants have done that. There are some people that have been doing the right thing. They continue to pay their way. They continue to, because they're working, not cause any issues of anything, of any matter of that like, and no issue. You have other people that truly have had hardships and had financial burdens and have lost work and have lost time and have lost income. And many of those people that have done that, whenever they would come across some income, would actually pay what they can to the landlords. And that's the right thing to do. And the right thing for the landlords is to work it out with them. Now, I'm a landlord myself, and anytime I've had a tenant that would come to me and basically say, Nick, I'm short. I haven't been working. I only worked 2 days this week. I worked 1 day last week. I worked whatever, because this is all I have. I have $200-300. I have $500. I have this is what I can pay you. I promise you, as soon as I start working again, as soon as I get some income again, I'll give you what I can as fast as I can. And part of being a human being for a landlord, because we are human beings, we're not some kind of monsters the way a lot of the media likes to make us, is turning and working out with other human beings and trying to help each other out. Now, the problem is when you have tenants that by all means they have the ability to be able to pay the rent, and they are continuing to work without a problem, and they continue to collect income from one place or another. It's a major problem. We're talking about a real major problem when the government turns around and tells us you can't even ask them. you can't even ask them to prove to you that they can't pay. And we could see with our own eyes. And we know for a fact that people are working. Hell, I've been into a place where I can't say who exactly, whatever the case is, but I've been into a place where I know one of my tenants work, saw them working, and they haven't paid me since April. And they haven't given one dime or one attempt to be able to play. And there's nothing I could do about it. And I guarantee you, there are so many other tenants, that are doing that, and so many other landlords that are suffering because of that. And that's something that, for some reason or another, is just okay. Well, I'm going to say something. It's not okay. It really isn't okay. And for our local officials to turn around and try to make it okay, to say it's okay, is a travesty. You know, this is not an issue that the landlords brought upon. They didn't create the coronavirus. And the same way you're trying to protect the tenants because of this pandemic, which is a noble thing that you're doing. You want to help your citizens. You're neglecting and you're ignoring another segment of your citizens altogether. And that is encourageable. It is by far an action that will continue to cause many issues down the line. There will be a ripple effect, a domino effect of more damage to continue this way. And I'm going to say why. Let me give you a full breakdown of why this is going to continue to cause more problems, and way bigger problems than what everybody believes they're seeing right now. And here's how it goes. When you tell, especially the small landlords, the ones that are basically breaking even or have very small budgets or small backup to be able to get them through months. I'm not talking about 1 month or 2 months or 3 months of not collecting any income. We're talking about months. We're talking about from March, and we're in October right now. So how many, who out there knows how to do math? 7 full months. We're talking about 7 full months of not getting rent. And here's the thing. They're still having to pay their mortgages. In some cases, they might have been able to get some kind of forbearance going forward. And it depends on how big the building is, and depending who the lender is, and depending on how workable they are, they might have been able to get some forbearance. But here's another thing that's happening. The city's still collecting property taxes. They haven't decided to put a moratorium on property taxes. Why is that? DEP is still sending bills for water. Con Edison is still sending electrical bills. National Grid is still sending gas bills. The petroleum companies that are filling up the oil tanks are still collecting. So all those items don't have a moratorium on it. However, rent does have a moratorium on it. How's that just? How is that fair? How is that protecting your citizens? Here's how the ripple effect's going to happen. Because I'm telling you, there are so many landlords out there that are so underwater right now and are in such pain right now that they're not going to be able to ever recover from this. They might lose their properties. They might get foreclosed on. And you know what? You have the public turning around and saying, oh, boo-hoo, the big bad landlord is going to lose their building. Oh, the big bad landlord is going to actually lose their properties. Good for them. No, it's not good for them. Because I'll tell you something, many of those little landlords started off the same way as a lot of the little tenants. They worked hard. They scrimped, they scraped, they got whatever they could. They put all their money together. They said, I'm going to live the American dream. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to try to build myself a retirement, a nest egg, something to be able to live off, something I could give my kids, and they buy a little building. It might be a 2-3 family. It might be a 6 family. It might be whatever the case is. And they could barely buy it, but they buy it and they say, I'm going to keep working hard to pay it off. And then by the time I'm a retirement age, I'll have a building that's paid off, and then I'll be able to collect some income, because I guarantee you, within a few decades, Social Security, you thought it was bad right now, it's going to be so much worse. And if people are not taking care of themselves to give themselves an additional type of ability to get other streams of income for their old age, they're going to be in a big problem. And I'll tell you something else. The government's going to have a bigger problem, because you're going to have a lot more people that are dependent on them, because they basically cut their legs from under them and couldn't save. So you're going to have a situation where you're going to have so many of these little landlords, so many of them. And I'm just going to take a quick side note and just say this. A lot of people, somewhat, they might, and I'm going to say this, they might somewhat sympathize with small landlords. More people don't than others. But they don't sympathize at all for the larger landlords. And it's apparently clear. I'm not a multi-billion-dollar landlord that owns billions of dollars or millions upon millions of dollars of property throughout New York City. I'm considered a small landlord. So this is not coming from a personal bias. I'm not a Bloomberg or a Trump or whoever you think is, real estate moguls. But I also know what's right is right. And just because somebody, a company, a business, a partnership, an individual was able to get themselves in a position to become a large landlord, a person that was able to acquire a lot of properties and a lot of wealth over the span of their lives, I don't believe that we should turn around and say, you know what? Now you're going to pay. Why? Because we don't have it. You're going to pay for it. That's not the right thing to do either. Just because they were able to get themselves in a certain position, working hard, maybe some of them didn't work so hard. Maybe some of them did it through crooked ways. I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and itemize every single big real estate mogul out there. But I'm talking about in general. Just because you get to a certain level, and that applies for all businesses, but just because you got to a certain level it shouldn't mean you get penalized. It shouldn't mean you get taxed through the nose. You shouldn't have to pay a success tax. But that's my little side note on the large landlords. But let's go back to the small landlords, and let's try to understand where their mindset is. What's going to happen to them when they can't pay these buildings off? I mean, there's already an escape from New York mindset right now. There's already people just looking for a reason to leave the city, leaving New York in general. Now you're giving them more reason. I'll tell you what, if my current position wasn't what it was, and I didn't have my entire family here, and I was rooted here, and all my livelihood and business was here, and I'm 43 years old, and I would have to start all over again from zero, I would be out the door so fast. I would be in Florida, I'd be in Texas, I'd be in Alabama. I don't know where you want to call it. I'm not going to be here in New York because I don't like to work like a dog, basically spit blood so that the state and the city comes in and just sucks me dry. I don't like that. And the people that do like that, they're just masochists. Either that or delusional, or they're so corrupt and they got their hands in every single pot there that they're okay with it. But as a normal human being, I'm definitely not good with that. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that are not good with that either. So, why this imbalance? Why? You give the tenants the ability to have a rent freeze, eviction moratorium, and there's nothing that the landlords could do about it. Okay, let's look at it from the noble approach. That's a great thing. You give the tenants the ability, the flexibility to be able to live and get themselves back together. But what are you going to do about all these landlords that just can't afford to sustain? Because I listed everything perfectly. I listed the fact that they still have to pay DAP. They still have to pay their property taxes. They still have to pay their utilities, electric, gas, oil. Oh, you also have to pay insurance. Did I forget about that? We still have insurance to pay for. And God forbid you don't pay for it, you got a problem. That's not coronavirus. I'm just a smoker. So you take all that into consideration, and then let's just pile on. Let's just pile on, because you know what happens when you own a building and you own a property? Things break. Big surprise, right? Things break. You might get a leak in the roof. A boiler might bust. Some tenant might get into a domestic dispute with their wife and they break the window and you have to come and fix it. But there's no moratorium on that. You got to pay. You got to fix it. And I'll tell you what, if you don't fix it and you don't make the repairs necessary, you're getting a call from the tenants to 311. And then they're going to bring in the inspectors because they'll run. They'll run right away and they'll come in and make an issue if there's any kind of complaints or violations. But what happens to the landlord that just doesn't have the money to make that repair now because he just lost 7 months of lost income? Where that landlord would have right away went there and replaced or repaired whatever was necessary. But now because you've depleted and sucked that landlord dry, they've got nothing left. And by the way, they might have gotten a couple of loans that still are being paid or need to be paid, and they're tapped out. They can't borrow any more money because maybe they could have borrowed money to keep themselves afloat. But now in a lot of cases, they can't even borrow money. What are you going to do now? I'll tell you another thing that's affecting the economy that people don't realize. Because of the fact that landlords don't have money, because of the fact that they're stuck, because of the fact that they're sucked dry financially, they can't even hire the proper individuals to do work in the house, in the buildings, or to hire extra contractors that would have done other things. And I'll give you a perfect example. An apartment needs to be painted. Normally, you'd hire a painter for $2,000, $3,000. But guess what? That tenant hasn't paid a dime. And maybe half the other tenants in that building, or maybe all of the tenants in that building haven't paid a dime in rent. And you don't have any money. But by law, you have to go and make sure that that apartment's maintained. There's a law that every 2, 3 years, you have to paint an apartment. And if they're demanding for it to be painted, they didn't put a moratorium on all those things. Now, there might be a wink, wink, we understand thing, but there's no moratorium on there. And there's definitely not any type of relief on that. So what happens? The landlord, hopefully, if the landlord is handy, might go and paint the apartment themselves. And they'd be able to save a couple $1,000s by doing so. And hopefully they did a right job. It doesn't look like a Picasso drawing. But the painter that would have done that normally just lost a wage, just lost some money. That's another piece of the equation that you just lost in the economy. You don't realize that. You realize that it's the landlord's already suffering. Let the landlord suffer. No, you have the other contractors that are suffering as well. You have those painters that would normally have painted things. I'll tell you what, certain things that might have been extra things that a landlord would have normally done might be cutting down on. Maybe they had a landscaper, somebody that came in and took care of the grounds. Not necessary, but maybe that's what it does. And say, listen, Mr. Landscaper, Mr. Green Thumb, whoever you are that's going to come and take care of the grounds, you're going to have to take a pause. We can't afford to keep paying you. Now what? That person's out of work. And maybe the landlord will go there with a couple of hedge clippers and just chop a couple of things themselves and take a broom and a rake and just clean up everything bare minimum, and that's it. You know, there's no tripping hazards. It might not look the most beautiful it ever did. It might not look as great as a landscaper would have made it, but it's good enough to live in. And that's what's happening now, too, as well. Certain improvements that a landlord might have normally done or had on their agenda to do to a building might be cut out altogether. Altogether. You know, there's major capital improvements that many landlords on a year-to-year scale budget for and say, okay, next year we're going to do the roof. Next year we're going to do the windows. Next year we're going to do the halls, the rails, etc., etc. Regardless if they're absolutely necessary or not, they like to do them in order to keep the place maintained, have a great environment for the tenants, and that kind of situation. That's not happening now. Why? Because the landlords don't have the money to do so. Simple as that. Sounds blunt. It's the truth. It's just what it is. You might not like what you have to hear from me right now if you're a tenant. And I'll tell you something, the tenants that are human beings and the right people, they have no issue with what I'm saying right now. I'm going to just say straight out, the people that are deadbeats, those are the ones that have the issue. The ones that are looking for every single reason to squirm out of doing the right thing and using the government and the local politicians as available. Well, they said we don't have to. It's my right. But you as a human being with a little bit, just a little bit of morality, putting somebody in bankruptcy, doesn't that bother you in any way? No, of course not, because everybody's in it for themselves. Everybody wants to do what they want to do. And you know what? That's the way. Everybody wants what they want. And it doesn't affect me. I don't care if it affects you. That's the mentality. That's the mindset. And it's wrong. And what's wrong is that I only have 1 hour for the show, and I can't rant on for another 5 hours about this topic. And I promise you, this topic will not get neglected. I'm going to do another live stream that I'm going to get even more into it. I'm going to give a lot more information out there. It's not going to be just a situation of me ranting from one side or the other. Like I said, I'm breaking this down on its bare essential levels. That way, everybody could really truly understand what it is that is happening right now. Hopefully, certain politicians, certain local officials will finally get their mind straight and decide that we're not just going to go for what's the popular opinion and what's going to get us just votes. It's going to be something that's going to be a law, a mandate that is going to help the entire community and help the economy long after they're not in office anymore. Because everybody wants to be the hero, everybody wants to be known as the champion of the people, and then when they're gone, they're forgotten about it, and it becomes the other guy's burden. Well, I'll tell you something. Everything that's happening right now, right at this moment, right this second, is going to be a burden for the entire community, the entire city, all of New York State for many years to come. And I feel very bad. I feel I feel I don't know what I feel for the possible politicians that will be taking over what is going to be left to them, but they're going to be in a lot of pain. And that being said, I'm getting shooed off by Trevor. Trevor, you want me off, right?
Yeah, Lou is ready.
So he's getting me off, and I will be back with you again next week for the Halloween show. Looking forward to those crazy stories, and have a great week. And look for the live streams that are going to pop on YouTube Live. Have a great night. Thank you.